In our past life, both my master and junior brother were poisoned in the illusion realm. Having secretly adored my master for 3 years, I saved him from the catastrophe of spiritual meridian explosion. My junior brother endured the flesh-corrosive agony of the poison, plunged into the icy spring, and had his spiritual meridians severed, never to cultivate again. Out of gratitude, my master married me. The tender care he once showed vanished after marriage, leaving me with nothing but his icy indifference. In the end, he abandoned me without hesitation to save his junior sister. Given a second chance at life, I kicked our master into the frozen spring and sprinted away with my junior brother in my arms. When my junior brother saw me wake up, his delicate face flushed crimson with shyness. Senior sister, may I take responsibility? 1. The raging flames engulfed me whole as I struggled to open my smoke-stung right eye that kept tearing up. All I saw was Master Jared's white-robed figure gliding away into the distance. My junior martial sister and I fell off a cliff during our battle with the beast. She vanished without a trace, while I plunged into a fiery formation and was instantly engulfed in flames. Our master caught up and glared down at me coldly. Where's Lila? I shook my head weakly, reaching out desperately for his rescue. With his cultivation nearing the great ascension stage, saving me from this infernal formation would have been child's play for him, yet he turned and left without a moment's hesitation, as if unwilling to waste another second on me. In the end, I perished just like that, reduced to a handful of ashes beneath the soul-scorching flames, trapped within the formation with no hope of release. I was listlessly toying with my own remains when I caught sight of my demonic junior brother's breathtakingly beautiful face, staggering in disbelief. He nearly fell before lunging toward me. I reached up to catch him, but his body passed through my spirit, tears splashing onto that handful of ashes, scorching beyond belief. Senior sister, you're so foolish, he sobbed. He never cried, not even when Master punished him with the whip for his childhood mistakes, yet my death brought tears to his eyes for the very first time, right before me. If we could do it all over again, would you save me? His face was ashen, his voice bordering on a plea, and his eyes were so swollen and red from crying, they looked as if they might weep blood. If I could relive it, I would only save you, too. My body suddenly felt heavy as I groggily opened my eyes. The blazing sun overhead made me squint immediately. I raised a hand to shield my eyes, then gasped in disbelief the next moment, staring in shock at my completely unharmed arms and body. I was utterly bewildered. Did I really get reborn? The sensation of my skin feels incredibly real. My entire body intact. Just as I was about to pull out a mirror to check my face, a hoarse voice rasped from behind me. Laura, help your master. My body went rigid as I turned my head slowly. There stood Jared in his pristine white robes, leaning against a tree with cheeks flushed like rouged silk. His almond-shaped eyes glistened, dark, fathomless pools carrying unspoken promises. In my past life, I'd recognized that silent plea. Already drawn to him, I became his antidote, offering my body to cure his love poison, but remembering his betrayals from that lifetime, how he repaid kindness with cruelty. My eyes darkened as I glanced at the shimmering glacial spring radiating cold mist by the ancient tree. Gathering all my strength into my right leg, I delivered a vicious kick straight to Jared's hip. Already poisoned and writhing in agony, he stood no chance against my sudden flying kick. Besides sword training, my only pastime was playing kickball with junior disciple Asher. My right leg's powerful enough to leave bruises. That precious master of mine probably has a nasty welt across his waist right now. The master tumbled several rolls before channeling spiritual energy to steady himself, clawing desperately at the grass in his disheveled state. Laura, his voice came out weak and dazed. What are you doing? With a saccharine smile plastered on my face, I spoke in mock solemnity. Master, propriety dictates distance between men and women, even for immortal cultivators. This icy spring can relieve your urgent condition. These unworthy hands dare not taint your purity, so I'll respectfully send you down with my foot instead. As I spoke, I raised my foot and delivered a firm kick. With a resounding splash, Jared tumbled into the water just as planned. The shock seemed to restore some clarity to his eyes, now wide with outrage, as he roared, Laura, you see no evil. I hastily covered my eyes and said respectfully, this disciple takes his leave. With that, I made a swift exit. Little did I know in my past life that my junior brother nearby had also fallen victim to the love poison. To survive, he plunged into the icy spring, only to end up with shattered meridians, barely clinging to life. Asher of the Sun Moon Blade, once heaven's favored son whose swordsmanship rivaled my own, has fallen just like that. I remember that scalding tear at life's end, hot enough to sear the soul. Fine, I quickened my search. 3. I found Asher deep inside a cave. He was curled up against the stone wall, trembling. His eyes were glazed, the once lovely peach blossom gaze now vacant. His lips stood out vividly red. Upon closer look, he'd bitten through the corner in silent agony. Even so, broken whimpers kept escaping his lips against his will. Senior sister, a delicate blush spread across his fair, handsome face as his gaze softened the moment he saw me. The wariness in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a pure, radiant smile. It's really you. I thought I was hallucinating. Seeing him like that, my heart ached with pity, overriding any other thoughts. I quickly reached out and stroked his hair reassuringly. Don't be afraid, I whispered. Your senior sister will save you, gathering spiritual energy in my hands. I took a deep breath and simply lifted him into my arms. He might look tall and slender, but he was surprisingly heavy. I stumbled a bit before finally steadying myself. Asher's face flushed even deeper, even sounding somewhat incoherent. Senior sister, I can still stand. Holding my breath, I said, It's fine. Senior sister's sword riding is excellent. We'll be back soon. With that, I summoned my bonded sword, silently recited the incantation, and the sword swiftly shot forward, in less than 15 minutes. I returned to Swordcrest Peak, carrying him all the way back to his courtyard in one breath before urgently summoning an alchemy sect senior I was close with to examine him. By then, Asher had already passed out from the agony of the love poison. His entire body burned like fire, as if he might burst into smoke at any moment. The alchemy senior hesitated, then pulled me aside for a private conversation. This love poison has no cure except through yin-yang union. Toss him into the cold springs, that might just keep him alive. No other way. My senior brother's eyes flickered, but he insisted. Truly, none. Sensing something off, I pleaded until he relented. The Sword Sect's 10th layer illusion realm holds Frostbloom herb, antidote to all poisons. If I could retrieve it, the cure was possible. I was instantly at a loss. Even late-stage nascent soul cultivators couldn't guarantee safe passage through the 10th illusion realm. How could I, a disciple who just formed my nascent soul 2 days ago? For a moment, my spirit sank. In desperation, I thought, worst-case scenario, I could just ask my junior brother which girl he fancies and beg her for help on my knees. But truth be told, my fists were already clenched. In this world, only my junior brother truly cares for me. How could I ever abandon him? I'd go through hell or high water to retrieve that Frostbloom herb for him, so I begged our alchemy senior brother to suppress Asher's poison with elixirs temporarily. Learning I had but 7 days left, I gripped my life-bound sword and ascended to the 10th illusion realm. With one last distant glance toward my junior brother's courtyard, I stepped through without hesitation, for only upon entering this 10th realm did I realize the legends spoke true. On the first day, I lost an arm in my desperate struggle against the soaring raptor. On the second day, I crossed blades with the sea serpent, suffering internal injuries. The third day saw me taming a giant serpent. Its needle-like fangs pierced my arm before I severed its head with one stroke, leaving my left arm completely paralyzed. On the fourth day, a spirit fox attempted to beguile me with its charms. I nearly succumbed to its trickery, but my unwavering will and flawless swordsmanship prevailed as I knocked it unconscious with a single strike. Come the fifth day, I finally located the Frostbloom herb, only to narrowly escape being devoured by a giant eagle, though not without sustaining meridian damage. On the sixth day, I found the path out of the illusionary realm. The moment I escaped, my legs gave way and I collapsed to the ground. Though utterly exhausted, my heart was filled with quiet joy. In this lifetime, my prodigiously gifted junior brother, that peerless jewel among men, would never again be doomed to stagnation or demonic corruption. After catching my breath, I struggled up from the ground, swallowed a hemostatic pill, burned the last remnants of my spiritual energy, and soared away on my sword. The senior alchemy disciple had been tending to his junior brother these past few days. The effects of the love poison were suppressed, yet Asher remained unconscious. When the senior alchemy disciple saw me, his eyes widened in shock. With all that blood and those injuries, I'm genuinely impressed you're still standing. I pulled out the Frostbloom herb and handed it to him. He stared in astonishment for a long moment before rushing off to refine elixirs for his junior brother. Utterly exhausted with both spiritual and physical energy drained, I collapsed onto a low couch and fell into deep slumber. I must have slept for ages, through the haze of drowsiness. I felt someone gently wiping my body with a damp cloth. The movements were slightly stiff, yet gentle and meticulous. The sensation was strangely comforting. I struggled to open my eyes to see who it was, but my eyelids and body felt leaden, impossible to rouse. In my dazed state, I slipped back into unconsciousness. When I awoke again, my junior Asher was at my bedside, staring intently at my face. I jolted awake, instinctively moving my hand only to find Asher holding it. When he noticed I was awake, his handsome face flushed crimson in an instant, his thick, delicate lashes cast faint shadows beneath his eyes as they lowered, his voice carried the melodious clarity of a brook over stones, yet tinged with bashful restraint. "Senior sister, may I take responsibility?" "Me? Responsible? Responsible for what? Responsible to whom? Did this kid misunderstand something?" Gritting through the pain, I propped myself up. He instantly slid a cushion behind me. His pale blue robes fluttering past, that slender waist of his kept swaying right before my eyes. Let's face it, I've always been a lustful creature. Back then, I fell for my master not just for his gentle patience, but also for that devastatingly handsome face. In the dim surroundings, only the warm glow of bedside candles softened Asher's silhouette, casting a gentle light on his fair, handsome face now tinged with a suspicious blush. Yet he suppressed his shyness and gazed at me with earnest focus. "Senior sister ventured into the Swordsex 10-layer illusion realm to cure my poison, only to return covered in wounds and unconscious for 10 full days. When I had to cleanse your injuries," his face flushed deeper, those eyes now refusing to meet mine. "I've offended my senior sister." My mind went blank with a buzzing sound. Suddenly I remembered. During my dazed slumber, someone had carefully wiped my body and changed my clothes, so it really was my junior brother after all. For a moment, I felt rather embarrassed. The memory of those hands touching my skin lingered, their fingertips still vivid with a slight roughness. Instinctively, I glanced down at his hands. Asher seemed to sense it and momentarily withdrew, only to firmly grasp mine again without hesitation. "I wish to become cultivation partners with you, senior sister," without thinking. I blurted out a refusal. "No way." My junior stared at me blankly, his usually gentle, soft eyes now dark and radiating an unfamiliar strangeness. It was as if he wouldn't give up until I gave him a satisfactory answer. Suddenly, he let out a soft laugh, a hint of self-mockery in the curve of his lips. "Did senior sister reject me because of our master?" 5. My thoughts drifted far away. About a year ago, after playing kuju with my junior brother, we lay resting together on the grass. He suddenly turned to me and murmured, "Senior sister reveres our master, yet he's repeatedly favored Lila. Doesn't that make you resentful?" Resentful? Perhaps I was, at first, resentful that our master couldn't be impartial, that he doted on her while repeatedly dismissing my pleas. As the senior disciple, you should yield to others. This was my master's most frequent admonition to me. Whenever these words were spoken, all my strength would drain away, and any protest died on my lips. "I'm fine." I forced a smile despite my heavy heart. During the trial, it was indeed my negligence that failed to protect my junior sister. The master's punishment was justified, Asher scoffed. "She's already at the golden core stage, and though she joined the sect later, she's actually a year older than our senior sister, yet she clings to that junior sister title, playing the delicate damsel in distress." What really grated on Asher was how Lila always put on that fragile, helpless act when tattling. Just thinking about it made his expression darken, but the sect master always took her side, every single time. Seeing him even more upset than I was, I ended up comforting him instead. "You're the only one who truly cares, Asher. I'm so lucky to have you." Asher seemed not to hear me, staring at me intently before suddenly lowering his voice. "Senior sister, do you have feelings for our master?" My eyebrows shot up as I was about to deny it, when Asher drawled again. "What's there to like about him anyway? He's getting on in years, his eyesight's failing, and he can't tell right from wrong. Why not?" His voice softened, a faint glimmer in his eyes. "Why not? Pay more attention to those around you." His gaze lowered as the fading glow of sunset illuminated his face. Watching him quietly, it suddenly struck me. Asher had turned 18. The youth had broad shoulders and a slender waist, lean yet surprisingly strong. Though he started sword training half a year after me, he could still match me blow for blow. He was strikingly handsome, with perfect bone structure, rosy lips, and pearly teeth. His soulful eyes held warmth for everyone, yet a single indifferent glance could make hearts skip a beat. A swordsman of such striking looks, refined bearing, and extraordinary talent naturally never lacked admirers. I asked him with a smile, "What about you, junior brother, with so many fair immortals in our sect? Has any caught your eye?" Asher raised his gaze, lips parting slightly before finally admitting, "Yes, there is." "Well now," I exclaimed in delight, "so my sword-obsessed junior brother has already had his heart stirred. Tell me, which Peaks Immortal has won your favor? The senior sister will gladly help you." Asher remained silent. He shot me a fleeting glance, his tone cooling as he said, "No need for your concern, senior sister. What I desire, I'll claim for myself." With that, he turned and walked away. After that day, he didn't come to spar with me for quite some time, yet I understood him perfectly. He's grown up now, with his own thoughts and feelings. Plus, there's the whole male-female thing, so as his senior sister, it's not really my place to interfere, and so, our relationship just faded away, until today, I traversed all 10 layers of the illusionary realm for him. risking my life to find the antidote. Perhaps he's grateful. But seeing me bedridden with all these injuries for his sake, that guilt must be eating at him, yet guilt is just guilt, nothing more. Gritting through the pain, I managed a strained smile. Asher, you were poisoned. As your senior sister, saving you was my duty. Our bond over these past 10 years, I could never stand idly by. Don't, and can't, pledge yourself to her just because your senior sister saved you. If you do, you'll never find true happiness. You have feelings for another immortal maiden. What would become of those feelings if we were to become cultivation partners? I mean every word. In our past life, my master took me as his cultivation partner out of guilt after compromising my virtue. And then what happened? Yet he remained cold-hearted, offering marriage merely out of obligation, with no trace of warmth. Love cannot be hidden. Just as the absence of it is painfully obvious. Asher stared at me for a long while, his lips curling in mockery, his entire face suddenly revealing an uncharacteristically sharp edge that belied his years. Senior sister once sacrificed herself for our master. How I envy him. Why won't you do the same for me in this new life? His pitch-black eyes held an unsettling intensity, locking onto me with an eerie, unblinking gaze. I stood frozen, as if struck by lightning. Asher, he's also been reborn. 6. Before I knew what was happening, Asher had already pulled me into his embrace. He'd truly grown up, his hands now much larger than mine, his fingers interlaced with mine in a firm hold as he cradled me carefully, his voice so featherlight it might float away. Lara, he called me by name for the first time, with the tenderness of a lover. Will you cultivate the Tao with me as partners? Though phrased as a question, I could detect a carefully concealed persistence in his tone. It dawned on me belatedly, his every gesture and expression during that sudden coldness from Asher a year ago, pondering every subtle moment we shared together. Suddenly it dawned on me, that junior brother who grew up with me, trained with me, crossed swords with me, could it be, he's actually in love with me? The possibility stunned me, leaving me momentarily at a loss for how to react, yet there he was, gazing at me from such close proximity, his flawless jade-like face so near, those peach blossom eyes holding me captive like tiny fishing hooks. I was utterly spellbound. Suddenly, he leaned in, pressing his faintly blushing peach blossom lips gently against my cheek. He smelled divine, that intoxicating warmth of osmanthus enveloping me. My gaze locked onto his Adam's apple just inches away, watching it bob slightly as I shamelessly swallowed hard. Well, he asked again. I was utterly spellbound by his beauty, completely losing my bearings. Then came his gentle embrace that stole half my soul away. Before my thoughts could catch up, the words tumbled out impulsively. All right. At my answer, I could hear his heartbeat quicken. He nuzzled against me affectionately, cat-like, his eyes crinkling with contentment. Since you've agreed, senior sister, no take-backs. With that, he scooped me toward the inner side of the bed and settled in beside me as naturally as breathing. Meeting my startled gaze, he arched an amused brow. Don't be afraid, senior sister, I'll watch over you. We'll need to change your dressing again at midnight. Me. 7. Asher has changed. I always thought he was pure and kind-hearted, naive to the core, yet now, he frowned slightly as the warm cloth wiped away the oozing blood. The wound was dangerously close to my heart meridian, with my left arm still numb from snake venom and my right wrist stiff as a puppet's. Changing the dressing myself was truly difficult. The slight damage to my spiritual veins also slowed my recovery. All I could do was apply medicine while swallowing elixirs, healing at this painfully slow pace. With his striking eyes veiled by white silk, my junior brother traced the wound over my heart, his fingertips grazing its edges with deliberate, meticulous care. He couldn't see, but I certainly could. My face, my skin, everything burned as if scorched by flames, the heat rising uncontrollably. Asher's slender fingers never strayed where they shouldn't, yet their mere sight set my pulse racing, sending involuntary shivers through me. He suddenly chuckled softly, the furrow between his brows easing. What are you afraid of, senior sister? I'm no beast. With nearly 30 years of shared history across lifetimes, you know exactly what kind of man I am, though the fault lies with me. Had I confessed my feelings sooner in your past life, perhaps you wouldn't have taken that fatal misstep. My trembling and bashfulness gradually stilled under the soothing calm of his voice. But what does this have to do with him? Everything in my past life was my own willing choice, and I ultimately reaped what I sowed. Had I known my junior brother was also poisoned in that past life, I would have saved him first without hesitation. After all, in my heart, the affection I held for our master paled in comparison to the years of camaraderie with my sect siblings. Asher, I suddenly remembered how he'd smiled weakly at me, even as his spiritual veins shattered in his past life. My eyes welled up, and my voice caught in my throat. If I had known in my past life that you were also afflicted by the love poison, I would have saved you without hesitation, just as I would now. The hand applying the medicine paused slightly. A scent of herbs wafted to my nose as his hand gently caressed my cheek, slowly, yet clumsily, wiping away the moisture from my eyes. I know, senior sister, I've never blamed you for a single moment. Those who save lives can do no wrong. I only blame myself. Just a dip in that icy spring shattered my spiritual meridians, leaving me unable to protect my senior sister anymore. Yet his words didn't just twist my heart with greater anguish and tenderness, they stirred something new. A warmth between us that never existed before. My junior brother, we grew up together, trained under the same master. He was half a year younger than me, following me around like a shadow every day, unlike our master, who diverted most of his attention to the new junior sister, even watching silently as she skillfully pinned her mistakes on me, never speaking up in my defense. The outcome, naturally. We both ended up kneeling in punishment, bearing the lash together. From the moment Lila became his disciple, our master's favor was no longer ours to claim. So what? Having you as my junior is more than enough. After applying the medicine, he carefully draped my robe over me and fastened the sash. Rest well, senior sister. Asher will take his leave now. He then removed the white silk covering his eyes, blinked his long eyelashes, and opened his glistening dark eyes, giving me a faint smile. If it weren't for that one self-incriminating remark, or the occasional slip-up in his words and actions, I would have still believed he was that innocent, adorable junior disciple, not a demonic cultivator. I struggled to move my numb left hand, using all my strength to grab his sleeve. I've always been a bold soul, in cultivation as in love. Since my heart stirs and I won't see his devotion wasted, why shouldn't I take that step forward? It's pitch dark out, and junior brother's barely recovered. All this running about is such a bother. Asher froze, his already flushed ears turning crimson, but as someone who'd lived 2 lifetimes, he merely lifted his thin eyelids and stared at me unblinkingly. Senior sister speaks wisely. Asher shall comply. 8. Thanks to Asher's meticulous care, I made a full recovery in just half a month when it should have taken 3 months. The trials in the 10th layer of the illusion realm also helped me steadily advance my cultivation, breaking through to a higher minor realm that day. While sparring with my junior brother, a shrill cry suddenly pierced my ears. Junior sister Lila appeared with tear-streaked cheeks, weeping like a rain-soaked pear blossom, and made as if to throw herself at Asher. Asher dodged sideways, his sun moon sword tracing an arc through the air as he positioned himself protectively before me, barring her from taking another step closer. Lila stood frozen before me with a pitiful expression, her almond-shaped eyes glistening with unshed tears as she pleaded, "Senior sister, I beg you to save our master." He returned burning with fever, calling your name repeatedly. He won't let anyone near him. Her shrill, desperate voice pierced my eardrums like needles, leaving a persistent ringing in my ears. Asher shot me an instinctive glance. I'm a bit bewildered. It's been a whole month, and I thought my esteemed master, who just stood by and watched me suffer, had long since dissolved into water in the icy spring. How is it possible he's back completely unscathed? But then again, it makes sense. Master's cultivation is at the grand ascension stage, just a step away from ascending to immortality. How could he end up like my junior brother in the previous life, with his spiritual meridians shattered, seeing me frozen in place? Lila took a hesitant step forward but dared not grab my hand under the threatening aura of the sun moon sword. Senior sister, please save our master. Before I could respond, Asher sneered, poisoned. Go beg the alchemy sect leader then. What's the point of bothering senior sister? She's no healer. Lila choked on her words, her face stiffening, gazing at Asher's breathtakingly handsome yet aloof face. She suppressed her awe and pleaded desperately, "Senior sister, I beg you, please visit master. He favors you most. How can you bear to see him suffer?" I spread my hands dismissively. Junior sister, you're mistaken. Everyone across the 10 Peaks knows Master dotes on you the most. Rather than pleading with me, junior sister should hurry and fetch the alchemy sect's elders to properly examine Master. I'm no saint. If he left me to die, showing mercy by not stabbing him upon my return would be kindness enough. Expecting me to sacrifice myself for him again, Lila tried to persuade me further, but I firmly refused with a single no. She glared at me fiercely, the jealousy in her large eyes no longer concealed, just as she hissed, "Master will teach you a lesson sooner or later." A white figure stepped forward to shield her. It was none other than my peerless and radiant master, Jared. His face turned deathly pale, drained of all color, his posture slumped yet his spine rigidly straight, desperate to shield Lila from my harsh words. "Lara, as my chief disciple, how could you speak to your junior sister like this?" He clung to consciousness, his body trembling at the edge of collapse, yet still he stood firm, an unyielding barrier before Lila. Such blatant favoritism, such touching devotion, it's enough to make me burst out laughing. "Master," I didn't bother hiding the sarcasm dripping from my gaze as I looked him up and down, "perhaps you should worry about yourself first." The light in Jared's eyes dimmed as he stared at me, words caught in his throat. Yet he still took 2 steps forward, his eyes dry and bloodshot. "Lara, You understand my predicament. You'll help your master, won't you? Help him. That's absolutely hilarious. The 10th illusion realm only allows one spirit herb per trip. Even if I could bring more, I'd never fetch his share. Expect me to suffer through that 10th realm again? Or are you still trying to tarnish my innocence and play with my feelings? Through 2 lifetimes, I've seen the rotten core beneath his gentle facade. He demands my devotion, it makes me bear all the consequences. How could such a shameless creature exist in this world? I rubbed the calluses on my fingertips, tired of pretending devotion. I do wish to save you, master, I said bluntly, but having already drained my vitality to rescue our junior brother, sacrificing my life now would be poor business. My gaze shifted to Lila behind him. Little sister here is practically a walking treasure vault, endless protective artifacts at her disposal. She'd gladly walk through fire for you. Jared's lashes fluttered as he stared at me in disbelief. He seemed unable to comprehend how I, who once hung on his every word with puppy-eyed admiration, could now regard his survival with utter indifference. But why on earth should I care? 9. My wedding with junior brother is approaching, hailing from the prestigious Sia family with immense wealth. I gasped when the solid gold phoenix coronet was placed in my hands. Is this really appropriate? Never in 2 lifetimes have I seen so much gold, it's practically blinding me. Dressed in fresh spring green, Asher lounged against the rocking chair with a lazy yet contented expression. He leisurely wiped the smudged lipstick from the corner of his mouth, narrowing his eyes slightly. Let me ask you once more, senior sister, do you truly have no regrets in marrying me? The weighty phoenix crown was set aside as my palm rested over his fiercely beating heart, unlike his cold spirit vein-shattered body in our past life. His warmth now pulsed with vitality, those large protective hands at my side, his gentle eyes brimming with tenderness. With a laugh, I replied, having given my word, how could there be room for regret? What's more, my heart truly races for him, more intensely and purely than in any past life. My pulse quickens at the sight of him, my heart sings when he appears. For I know his affection belongs to me alone. His arm tightened slightly around my waist, the smile in his eyes deepening. Beneath those striking brows lay a silent ocean of devotion. He leaned in to kiss me again, and I playfully pressed a finger against his lips in half-hearted protest. The intimate moment was shattered by the whistling of arrows outside, accompanied by desperate pleas for mercy. In the next instant, a dark figure burst through the door. Turning around, I saw Jared standing ominously in the doorway, his black-clad figure exuding venomous hostility as his icy gaze fixed upon our intertwined forms. Lara, his voice was hoarse, bearing no resemblance to the aloof immortal lord he once was. Are you determined to marry him? Even from a distance, I could see the bloodshot corners of his eyes, unnervingly unsettling. Amused, I tilted my head slightly. Since when does my revered master meddle in his disciples' marital affairs? I'm marrying Asher because I love him. Shouldn't my master be blessing his disciple for finding the love of her life? I leaned down, fingertips brushing over Asher's delicate brows with satisfaction. Each day I grow more grateful for yielding to his sweet persuasion. Now I'm betrothed to such a handsome, obedient man. Asher rose from the chaise with composure. Master, storming into my Sia manor and injuring so many today. What would the cultivation world think of such banditry? He carried himself with the innate nobility of a young master, drawing far more attention than the gaunt, skeletal Jared. What the world thinks has never concerned me. Jared cast a cold sidelong glance at his junior brother before flashing to my side in an instant. He looked haggard, with dark circles standing out starkly beneath his eyes. Suddenly dropping to one knee, he extended a gaunt, skeletal hand toward me as I reclined in the chaise lounge. Lara, come back with your master. Though you've been deceived by him, I bear no grudge. I'll treat you just as before, won't you? Jared's eyes held a hopeful glimmer, willing me to grant his request. I studied him in silence. He felt like a stranger. Ever since junior sister Lila joined our sect, he'd grown so distant. Who are you putting on this act for now? Just like old times. I looked at him with a mocking smile. Same as always, when junior sister gets wronged or hurt, I'm the one who gets punished. Jared's breath hitched abruptly, panic flashing in his eyes. He scrambled for words, but found there was nothing left to say. I watched him coldly, noticing his aura had lost its former purity, as if he'd fallen from grace. Barely managing to suppress the love toxin, he spoke with forced logic. As my disciple, your marriage is naturally my decision. You're still young. How could you possibly judge if he's worthy? I saw right through him. His summons was nothing but a ploy to use me as his pawn. I lowered my head and retrieved a jade pendant from my spatial ring, placing it flat on his palm. This was the token you gave me when I became your disciple. The debt of your teachings was repaid with my life in our past existence. May we sever all ties in this life and the next, each finding our own peace. The long sword materialized in my hand, my life-bound sword, obtained from the sword mound when I was 15. I drew my life-bound sword across my palm, letting blood drip onto the jade pendant. Just like that, the master-disciple covenant was dissolved with unsettling ease. The crisp sound of jade shuddering echoed beside me. Asher had smashed his pendant, severing our master-disciple bond in that single act. Immortal Jared never taught me anything. My swordsmanship improved only through my senior sister's guidance. A master like him, I'm better off without. 10. The day I married Asher in crimson bridal splendor stretching 10 miles. It's a beautiful, sunny day. The Sia family, a renowned clan now managed by Asher, saw many prominent cultivators arrive to celebrate the young patriarch's wedding. After a full day of busyness, my neck was practically broken from wearing that pure gold phoenix coronet. Asher personally removed my pearl and jade hairpins, then prepared a basin of warm water and gently wiped away my makeup. His movements were feather-light, and suddenly I remembered how his ears had flushed crimson when tending to my scraped knee. My heart began pounding like a drum. I grabbed his lapel, and he willingly leaned in, his eyes glistening with unspoken emotion. Why the sudden pull, my lady? His voice was a seductive murmur, lips curling upward as the flickering crimson candles cast our entwined silhouettes upon the walls. The endearment, my lady, sent heat rushing to my cheeks, my heart pounding like boiling water, yet never one to shy away. I boldly closed the distance when faced with his irresistible allure. Pressing my lips to his first, the arms encircling my waist drew tighter. Such generosity, my lady. The Sia shall ensure your complete satisfaction. The candle light flickered outside the window, yet it burned all night long, never dimming. My beloved's embrace was so warm, I couldn't bear to leave it. Just as the clouds cleared and the rain stopped, I heard someone report from outside the door. Young master, Sword Peak has sent 2 crates of spirit stones. Shall we accept them? Asher's captivating, almond-shaped eyes fluttered open slightly. He reached up to brush the sweat from my forehead and softly asked, "Does my lady wish for this congratulatory gift?" He surely has ulterior motive sending this gift, Asher. We must send it right back to him. Hearing the word we. Asher's eyebrows lifted with delight as he cheerfully ordered, not accepting it, throw it right back at him. Married life with Asher is nothing short of blissful. The Sia estate is spacious enough for us to practice swordplay by day, explore nearby towns for delicacies, and curl up together at night with those enlightening glow-in-the-dark romance novels. Whenever trouble arises in the Sia territory, we'd rally our disciples to vanquish demons and uphold justice. That day, calamity struck the nearby city of Qianling. Rumors spread of a fox demon appearing to bewitch people before tearing out their hearts. Exchanging a glance with Asher, we immediately rushed to Qianling. 11. Torrential rain lashed Qianling as every household barred their doors and windows. The demon compass in my hand pointed toward the desolate outskirts. Asher and I soared on our swords, soon spotting a temple shrouded in sinister black mist. I dove downward and crossed the temple threshold in an instant. Beneath a towering Saiyan deity statue lay a mutilated corpse, gutted in the most gruesome manner. Crouched beside the corpse was a disheveled woman, her tattered robes barely covering her frame, long hair matted with filth, head bowed. She seemed to be gnawing at something, producing bone-chilling crunching sounds as blood dripped steadily onto the stone floor. Somehow, the woman's silhouette struck me as eerily familiar. Just as I was about to study her closely, she suddenly raised her head and stared straight at me. Her face was deathly pale, fragile as parchment, with needle-sharp teeth and unnaturally large pupils that nearly swallowed the whites of her eyes, yet I recognized her instantly. It was Laya, my frail and helpless junior sister. Her gaze was chilling, a smear of blood stained the corner of her lips, and in her hands she held a half-eaten heart. Senior sister, her voice, syrupy sweet and winding, purred, "Seeing me like this, are you very pleased with yourself?" A shiver ran down my spine. It's true, I don't like Lila, but it's far from hatred. In my past life, all my love and hatred seemed reserved for that biased and heartless master of mine. I loved his tenderness toward me, yet hated how he couldn't keep up the pretense till the end. As for Lila, I merely saw her as a mischievous junior sister who loved causing trouble and shirking responsibility. I indulged her far too often. I shook my head at her, speaking calmly. "Lila, this is not how I wish to see you turn out. Perhaps my cultivation was too formidable. I'd reached the nascent soul realm before even turning 20. That's why I was genuinely willing to mentor this junior sister at first." She clearly didn't believe me, sneering, "Wasn't it you who convinced our master to banish me, with his favor toward me? He'd never have expelled me otherwise." No sooner had she spoken than she lunged at me with blinding speed. Her blackened, elongated nails came straight for my face. Without blinking, I deflected with a backhanded sword stroke that neatly trimmed them. She shrieked and lunged at me again. Seeing she meant to kill me, I showed no mercy either. In a few swift moves, I had her bound with demon-binding ropes. She never laid a finger on me, howling in frustration, alternating between threats and tearful pleas for mercy. "I'll never let you go. Wah. Please, senior sister, have mercy on me, Lara." "You're a monster," sob, "let me go. I swear I won't eat people anymore. You and the master are both psychos. Untie me right now." She writhed on the ground like a worm. If not for the corpse with its heart gouged out in this temple, I might have found her adorable. Asher crouched down as a magic circle expanded from his palm. Through soul-searching arts, he learned she'd devoured 5 people. He turned to me with conflicted eyes. "The immortal realm's law decrees. Any demon race killing within cultivation territory may be slain on sight by practitioners. 5 of those, she was doomed the moment she swallowed them. Before I could react, a long sword pierced through the air and impaled Lila through the heart. Her widened eyes reflected the icy stare of none other than her beloved master, Jared. "A mere demon like this warrants the Sia family's demon-binding chains," Asher sneered. "Jared, oh Jared. She was your most cherished disciple. How can you kill her so ruthlessly without a shred of remorse?" "Remorse?" Jared narrowed his eyes. "Why spare a demon that brings calamity to this realm?" Perhaps he had always been this callous. Neither person nor thing could ever outweigh his path to ascension. "My past life was spotless, but this lifetime bears the stain Lila left on him." 12. Asher's past life side story. Asher carried a secret he never spoke aloud. He's been secretly in love with his senior sister Lara for 10 years. A whole decade, from children too weak to lift training swords to spirited young cultivators. Then it hit him. Lara seemed to have fallen for their master. She'd light up whenever she saw him, glowing like a celestial maiden, her gaze practically glued to him. Asher was so jealous that he lay awake night after night, unable to sleep. He could only get up and practice swordsmanship. He dared not tell his senior sister that the reason he caught up to her in swordsmanship despite starting 6 months later was simply because he couldn't sleep at all. He was furious, frantic, and utterly helpless. One day, he accidentally wandered into a mystic realm with his senior sister and master, only to get separated from them. To make matters worse, he felt his body burning up as ghostly images of his senior sister began flickering before his eyes. He shook his head violently. Realizing it was just an illusion, it seemed he'd been afflicted with a love poison. Love's poison has no antidote. His heart belonged solely to his senior sister. Unwilling to surrender himself to another, without hesitation, he stumbled from the cave and plunged into the icy spring. The water pierced like needles through his meridians. Gritting his lips, he swallowed every whisper of her name. From that day forth, he was but a broken man, stripped of all cultivation, worse off than a commoner. When his senior sister learned, she held him with trembling hands, so warm it felt like life could return to him. Asher's eyes crinkled with a smile as he secretly kissed her hair, leaving her unaware. "Senior sister, are you really marrying someone else? Are you getting what you wished for? He'll love you properly, won't he?" He lacked for nothing in life except for his senior sister's affection. On her wedding day with their master, he didn't dare show up, stubbornly hiding in the desolate Sia manor. He repeatedly slashed his wrists. He was now a cripple who could no longer cultivate, no longer stand by her side, no longer protect her. The bitterness consumed him, yet in the end, death eluded him. He succumbed to his inner demons, falling into the demonic path. All he wanted was to live long enough to see her happy. But then he suddenly noticed the heartstone she had given him. Its light fading inch by inch. He remembered her saying, "This way, if my life is ever in danger, this stone will dim, and you'll know, with me protecting you, senior sister will be fine. Why would you even think of giving me this?" She gently touched his hair. "If I'm truly nearing my end someday, I'd want to see your face one last time." He rushed after the trail, only to find a handful of ashes. It was his fault. He still didn't get to see her for the last time. 13. Jared's past life side story. One day Jared suddenly realized his disciple Lara had blossomed into an elegant and graceful young woman. The sect had no shortage of suitors vying for her attention. Behind her back, they called her Fairy Judea, lining up to climb Sword Peak just to deliver love letters. Without exception, Jared confiscated them all and punished the suitors by making them copy sect rules. As he stared at the pile of love letters, his head throbbed with anger. He almost wished he could turn her into a hag so no one would pine for her. He'd always told himself his concern for her was merely a master's care for his disciple, nothing more, so he agreed to the sect leader's request to take on new disciples, hoping to divert his attention. He couldn't, and shouldn't, afford to invest too much of himself in her, yet inexplicably, ever since accepting these new disciples, she'd grown increasingly distant toward him. The more she withdrew, the more he found himself agonizing over her every move, an obsession he couldn't shake. Every time Lila came to complain, he'd show blatant favoritism and punish Lara instead, as if only through such pettiness could the darkness in his heart remain concealed, until love's poison coursed through his veins, and her face surfaced in his mind. She heard his call, understood the plea in his eyes. Despite her shy awkwardness, she still yielded to his wishes, yet he found no joy in it. He resented anyone having power over his emotions, craving her presence while simultaneously despising it. He wished she would just die, and die she did, by his deliberate neglect. That day he drained an entire jar of wine, laughing and weeping by turns. The tears were for the love he couldn't let go. The irony was, now there'd be no one left in this world to distract him from his spiritual path. He was that kind of madman, the more gilded the exterior, the more festering wounds within. The liquor burned its way down his throat. Suddenly, his chest burned with an inexplicable heat, blood gushed forth in an unending stream. Belatedly, he looked down, recognizing the long-forsaken sun-moon sword. He turned stiffly to meet Asher's blood-streaked, tear-filled eyes. Asher wrenched the blade free and plunged it backward through his own heart. In his final moments, he heard Asher whisper, "Senior sister, if there's a next life, please look at me." Jared heard it and sneered. But before he could utter a single mocking word, he too perished. When his eyes opened again, he found himself back on the day he was poisoned. Lara planted her stance and launched a full-powered flying kick without holding back. Story 2. After our parents died, my younger sister insisted on dividing the family property with me, but accidentally discovered a box our parents had buried underground. It contained a pair of beast-taming rings. One was carved with a small black snake, the other with a little earth dog. My sister snatched the earth dog ring first, leaving the black snake ring for me. She claimed the earth dog symbolized loyalty and would surely bring her wealth, so she frantically fed it to make it spit out gold coins, enabling her to live like a wealthy heiress. However, my younger sister spends money recklessly, frantically feeding the little stray dog to make it produce more coins. Overburdened, the poor dog eventually exploded and died. The little black snake, on the other hand, feeds on others' wealth and transfers it to me, but I always felt uneasy about this, so I rarely relied on it. Through my own efforts, I gradually became a billionaire CEO. Looking at the venomous-eyed little black snake, I shuddered and sealed it back into the beast control ring. At that moment, my sister barged in with spiteful eyes and stabbed a knife directly into my abdomen. "If it weren't for you taking my little black snake away, I should be the billionaire CEO now." Opening my eyes, the icy sensation on my thigh sent a shiver down my spine. Watching my sister disdainfully fiddle with the small earth dog beast ring in her hand, I understood immediately. I had been reborn. I looked down, clearly remembering that in my previous life, it was only after my sister and I performed the blood oath that the statue on the beast ring transformed into a real little animal. But now, before I could even perform the blood oath, the small black snake on the beast ring in my hand had already detached from the ring, flicking its tongue as it coiled around my thigh. Seeing the venomous gaze of the small black snake, I instantly felt a chill run down my spine. Unlike in the previous life, my sister didn't cherish the small earth dog beast ring in her hand this time. Instead, she said with slight disdain, "Sis, we haven't even performed the blood oath yet, so how did your little black snake detach from the ring? I want to trade with you." Hearing my sister's words, the little black snake's triangular eyes immediately lit up, even more human-like. It detached from my thigh and began slowly crawling toward my sister. But in the previous life, it was only after my sister and I dripped our blood that the two little beasts detached from the beast rings. Watching the little black snake's human-like smile spread across its mouth, I instantly realized, not only had I been reborn, but the little black snake had been reborn as well. Seeing the little black snake crawling toward her, my younger sister immediately threw the small earth dog's beast ring to the ground, snatched the beast ring from my hand, and wrapped the black snake around her own neck. She smugly said to me, "You're the older sister, so giving in to me shouldn't be a problem, right? This little black snake has such smooth and shiny skin, it suits me perfectly. As for you, a country bumpkin like you is better off paired with that little earth dog." Before I could even speak, my sister couldn't wait to drip her blood onto the beast-taming ring. Immediately after, her expression froze for a moment before she clapped her hands in excitement and exclaimed, "My little black snake can plunder other people's wealth and transfer it to me. If I specifically target millionaires, I'll never have to worry about food or clothing again. I can live the life of a wealthy heiress." The younger sister tightly hugged the little black snake in her arms. Looking at me with a guarded expression, I leisurely picked up the small earth dog beast ring from the ground and said to my sister with a smile, "Your elder sister will wish you in advance a life of luxury as a young lady from a wealthy family." With that, I paid no more attention to my sister and instead performed the blood ritual to claim ownership of the small earth dog beast ring. The moment the blood dripped onto it, it indeed confirmed my suspicions from my previous life. The functions of the two beast rings are completely different. The stray dog beast ring converts food into gold coins. The more it eats, the more coins it produces. But if it eats too much food, the stray dog won't be able to convert it all into coins and will instead explode and die. Looking at the adorable stray dog freed from the statue, I patted its head and said, "In this life, you'll live well with me, woof woof." After separating from my younger sister, I looked at my own emaciated arms, speaking to the adorable little mutt in my hands. "Sorry, little dog, I'm just too hungry. Could you please give me a gold coin?" The little mutt barked a few times, and I brought the hardened, moldy flatbread from my bag to its mouth. The little mutt didn't show the slightest disdain, opening its big mouth and swallowing it whole, and it spat out a gold coin for me. I took this gold coin straight to the pawn shop and exchanged it for tens of thousands in cash. Looking at the heavy cash in my hand, I suddenly recalled my previous life. I didn't like how the little black snake plundered others' wealth to feed me, as I found it rather unethical. Moreover, the little black snake's wealth plundering wasn't without cost. It didn't eat food but survived by draining its master's vitality. I also understood why the little black snake voluntarily left the beast ring after rebirth. Only then could my sister witness its true power. That's the only reason it didn't follow me. In my past life, I didn't let the little black snake plunder my fortune, so naturally it couldn't drain my vitality either. In my previous life, I became a billionaire CEO entirely through my own abilities without relying on the beast control ring. I spent days and nights tirelessly studying company management and researching various projects, so busy that there's no time even for a single meal. Even when my wealth rivaled nations, I developed severe stomach problems. Even slightly cold or mildly spicy food would immediately land me in the hospital after eating. But now, with the money I earned from the little mutt, I happily bought a whole pile of ice cream and the spicy strips I craved so much in my past life. After eating and drinking to my heart's content, I didn't rush to start building my fortune based on my past life's memories. Instead, I bought a plane ticket and started traveling the world to enjoy life, to make up for the regrets of my previous life. Unlike my foolish sister, I didn't exploit the little mongrel dog excessively, forcing it to exchange food for gold coins before it could grow properly. In the end, the little mongrel dog exploded and died. She kept indulging in extravagant spending daily, and even after losing the dog, she didn't restrain her consumption, ultimately ending up in destitution. But my experience from running a company in my previous life remains. In this life, even without the help of a beast control ring, I can still return to being a billionaire CEO. Although I don't force the little mutt to eat food in exchange for gold coins, but the greedy little mutt still spat out quite a few gold coins for me. With these gold coins, I've now accumulated millions in wealth, and now, my younger sister has also been relying on the little black snake to plunder others' fortunes, successfully became an executive at an investment firm. Any stock she sets her eyes on is destined to soar and skyrocket wildly. From then on, my sister became the stock god of the investment world. But as I looked at my sister's face on the news, despite the thick foundation concealing it, I could still see the exhaustion in her expression. Too, I knew it all along. My sister hadn't actually studied stocks carefully, but was entirely relying on the little black snake to plunder others' financial luck and transfer it to herself. My sister didn't keep it to herself either. She directly opened a live stream, letting stock traders follow her purchases, claiming she wanted to help everyone get rich together. Many online experts immediately began harshly criticizing my sister. They said she was just temporarily lucky, and that hosting a live stream to lead investors would eventually leave them completely bankrupt. Let's see how little sister deals with the consequences then. Yet little sister didn't care at all. Instead, she went even further by extensively hosting live streams to invest in stocks. "I'll lose everything. Do you know how much money I'm making now? Do you know how much the investors watching my streams have earned? When I'm rich enough to rival nations, let's see if you still dare to challenge me online." The experts were all red-faced with anger, cursing that little sister would eventually fall from grace. As for me, I relied on the experience of running a company in my previous life, using the money earned from the little stray dog. I gradually started entering the stock market. However, this was also my goal, but no longer to become a billionaire CEO, because living like that would be too exhausting. Moreover, in my previous life, when I truly became a billionaire CEO, my long-deceased parents suddenly showed up at my doorstep. The billionaire CEO's parents, dead for years, suddenly reappeared in the world, wealthy and with family reunited. Netizens were overwhelmingly envious. Yet no one knew that my parents' first act upon meeting me was to try seizing all my assets, even using a black serpent to drain my fortune's luck. During those days, if it weren't for my terrifying strength and desperate resistance, I would have long been devoured beyond recognition by my own biological parents. When I invested in the stock market, my sister naturally took notice of me. She traveled around the world every day, completely indifferent to the stock market trends. A casual point of the finger reveals a potential stock ready to soar. Look at me, even $1 million needs to be spread across several stock investments. My sister immediately called me, mocking. What? You want to make money in the stock market like me? Look at your petty demeanor. Your little mutt isn't cutting it. Why don't you just ditch that mutt, watch my live stream and follow my investments? I paid no attention, merely responding with a flattering smile. With my current investments, my assets have now reached tens of millions. Moreover, my investment skills and foresight have improved significantly compared to my previous life. Now I have more than enough money to spend, and the food for my little mutt is no longer what it used to be. All kinds of delicacies like abalone and seafood are now on the menu, and I won't allow the little mutt to spit out gold coins for me anymore. I patted the cute little mutt's head and said, I have enough money now. You don't need to spit out gold coins for me anymore. Eat whatever you want. I'm not short on your food or the gold coins you produce. Speaking of which, I suddenly remembered that my sister wasn't wrong about one thing. The little mutt is loyal. Even if I forcibly prevent it from spitting out gold coins for me, it still secretly fills my safe with them. As days passed, my sister's popularity grew higher and higher, and she was elevated to godlike status by stock traders. By now, she had established her own company and overnight became a billionaire CEO. While I was still at home studying the trends of the stock market, my younger sister suddenly came home, her body adorned with dazzling jewelry that nearly blinded me. My sister patted my head and said triumphantly, Sis, guess who called me today? I ignored her, just hugging my little mutt while staring intently at the stock market trends on my computer, seeing that I wasn't paying attention. She didn't get angry but continued on her own. It was our parents. Hearing this, I immediately felt a chill run down my spine and almost dropped the little puppy in my hands. I forced myself to stay calm and said, What nonsense are you talking about? Our parents passed away long ago. My sister looked at me with disdain. If this miraculous beast-taming ring can exist in this world, why is it impossible for our parents to come back to life? Pretending to think for a moment, I then exclaimed with feigned surprise, You're right, maybe they really have come back to life. Where are they? Quickly take me to see them. My younger sister disdainfully pushed my hand away and even wiped the spot I touched with a tissue. Why would you go see Mom and Dad? They said they only acknowledge me as their daughter. After all, my achievements are greater than yours. Besides, they didn't just come back to life. They said our family is a hidden ancient lineage, and only exceptional children like me are worthy of their acceptance. Someone like you, sister, isn't even fit to reclaim your ancestry. I immediately feigned disappointment, covering my eyes and sobbing. My sister sneered from the side, Sister, you can't blame me for this. Who told you not to be as outstanding as I am? I didn't say a word, just kept crying uncontrollably. After my younger sister left, only then did I raise my head, with not a single tear in the corner of my eye. You should know, in my previous life, my parents sought out me, $1 trillion CEO. Not only did they make me transfer my assets to them, but they also used a small black snake to drain my fortune, and even demanded I provide my life essence to feed the snake. If I refuse, throw me into the serpent pit, letting thousands of small snakes tear and bite at my flesh. That excruciating pain remains vividly etched in my memory to this day. Moreover, the so-called reclusive families my parents spoke of were nothing but deceitful excuses. They deliberately left the beast-taming ring at home. Whichever of us sisters struck it rich, they'd come knocking to seize it. Thinking of my sister, she would suffer the same fate as me in this life. There is not a shred of pity in my heart. After all, in our previous life, my sister stabbed me to death without showing any remorse, just as I was holding the little stray dog. Deeply engrossed in studying the stock market trends, the little mutt in my arms suddenly started barking loudly. Hiss! I suddenly heard the sound of a snake's tongue flickering. In my previous life at the viper pit, I suffered greatly from this very sound. I was so terrified that I collapsed onto the ground. When I looked up toward the source of the sound, it was the little black snake. It was flicking its tongue at me, its eyes revealing a human-like mockery. I stared at it in horror. I know you've also been reborn, in this life. We'll stay out of each other's way. Why are you still coming after me? The little black snake suddenly raised its head, lifting itself high with its tail, hissing continuously. There was still a venomous look in its eyes. I suddenly realized it was resentful because I didn't let it feed on my chi and blood in my previous life. Fury surged through me, and I pointed at the little black snake, shouting, Don't refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. When I hurt you, I could lock you back in the beast control ring, and in this life, I can do the same. The little mutt in my arms immediately jumped to the ground, baring its teeth at the black snake. Suddenly, my sister's anxious voice came from outside the door. Where's my little black snake? It's gone. As my sister pushed the door open, she saw me and the little black snake staring at each other in hostility. My sister shouted, You wretched woman! Are you trying to harm my little black snake because you see it brings me good fortune? How could your heart be so malicious?" After my sister finished speaking, the little black snake immediately looked extremely wronged, directly climbing up my sister's thigh and onto her neck. Its forked tongue was still flicking against my sister's lips. I was instantly disgusted, looking at the shiny scales of the little black snake coiled around my sister's neck, feeling physically sick. 3. I picked up the little stray dog and said coldly, "It was your black snake that crawled into my room on its own. I wouldn't even want to touch such a disgusting reptile." The little black snake's triangular eyes immediately welled up with mist. It kept nuzzling against my younger sister's chin. My sister hastily gave the little black snake a kiss on the lips. "Little black snake, my sister is just jealous that you bring me wealth. We shouldn't pay attention to such petty, envious people. Once we're richer than nations, she won't even get the chance to lick our toes." I didn't take my sister's words to heart. Watching her increasingly emaciated body, I sneered coldly in my heart, thinking, "Let's see if you can last until you're wealthy enough to rival a nation." Actually, these days, many stock investors in my sister's livestream have been commenting that she's lost weight recently, urging her to take care of her health. But my sister angrily scolded the investor, saying, "What's wrong with me being thin? Women should be slim. Are you just jealous that I'm rich and have a great figure? Don't follow my investments anymore. You're not worthy." But I knew the real reason behind my sister's weight loss had nothing to do with the stock market. It's because the little black snake frequently plunders others' financial luck and needs to feed on my sister's vital energy. But none of this has anything to do with me. However, due to my sister's interruptions, I can no longer focus wholeheartedly on observing the stock market trends. Instead, I started searching online for information about mom and dad. Money makes the mare go. Plus, I'm already a multi-millionaire now. As long as someone can answer my question online and provide clues about my parents, I won't hesitate to transfer them 1 million yuan. The results were indeed remarkable. Quickly piecing together scattered clues and combining them with memories from my past life, I uncovered the truth about my parents' staged death years ago. It turned out my parents were archaeologists who had stolen this pair of beast control rings from an ancient tomb. To avoid surrendering the beast control rings, they chose to fake their deaths. Their feigned death wasn't solely to avoid surrendering the beast control rings. It was also because they discovered these rings could generate astonishing wealth, but were harmful to the wearer's health. That's why in my previous life, after seeing me become a billionaire CEO, they came knocking at my door, and in this life, since my sister became the billionaire CEO first, they naturally sought her out instead, fabricate a lie about a reclusive family to keep my foolish younger sister firmly in my grasp. Suddenly, beads of sweat broke out on my forehead. In my previous life, even when I offered to hand over the little black snake and transfer all my assets to my parents, they still refused to let me go, and even allowed the little black snake to drain my life force. They say, even a mosquito is still meat. In this life, although I haven't made a fortune with this little mutt, my parents definitely won't let me off the hook. They also don't want the secret of the beast control ring to spread. I stared firmly at the little mutt. I must be well prepared to face my parents. Sure enough, the excuse our parents made up convinced my younger sister completely. My sister even spent a fortune to organize a family recognition gathering. The day before the gathering, my sister called me. "Tomorrow is the family recognition event I prepared for our parents. Many people know you're my sister, so you must attend." I was about to refuse, but then suddenly realized this could be an opportunity to learn about our parents' current situation, so I agreed. But my younger sister persisted relentlessly. "Although I'm generous enough to let you attend the family recognition gathering, you should understand that mom and dad are here to take me back to the family. You have no right whatsoever. Know your place." I couldn't help but laugh at my sister's words. "Those vile parents of ours, I don't need them." Amused, I replied, "If that's how you feel, maybe I shouldn't go after all. It'd save you the trouble. After all, if by chance mom and dad decide to take me back to the family instead, wouldn't that embarrass you?" My sister's voice faltered for a moment before she screamed hysterically, "Dahlia, I'm telling you, mom and dad would never take you back to the family. A worthless person like you doesn't deserve it." I didn't want to say anything more to my sister, so I bluntly stated, "Then I won't go. Someone as worthless as me doesn't deserve to attend your wedding celebration." Just as I was angrily about to hang up the phone, a heavy coughing sound came from the other end of the line, which sounded somewhat familiar to me. A male voice suddenly spoke up. "Dahlia, it's Dad. Even if we're not bringing you back into the family, you should at least come see me and your mom. Otherwise, people will say your parents are snobs who only acknowledge your wealthy younger sister but not their down and out older daughter." Listening to my father's unceremonious voice mocking me, I was just about to speak. My sister abruptly cut in and said bluntly, "You must attend tomorrow's wedding reception no matter what. I'm now a household name, and your absence will definitely generate negative publicity for me. I order you to attend." With that, she hung up the phone. I wasn't actually angry. Because verbal taunts like this have no effect on me, I stroked the little mutt's fur, pondering for a moment. I still decided to attend the wedding reception. After all, in my past life, I knew too little about my parents. When the wedding reception was held as scheduled, and I attended as promised, as soon as my parents saw me, their faces immediately lit up with smiles. Waving at me, they called out, "Laya, long time no see." Seeing the warm smiles on my parents' faces, I suddenly recalled the tragic experiences of my past life. In a hurry and fear, I lowered my head and whispered faintly, "Are you really my parents?" I forced my heartbeat to calm down and made my tone appear as composed as possible, pretending not to know them. I chatted with them excitedly, but unexpectedly, Dad gave a sinister smile and said bluntly, "Laya, why are you still pretending not to know Mom and Dad? Didn't you also get reborn? What's the point of acting like a stranger here?" Hearing these words, I nearly collapsed to my knees in fear. Watching the sinister smiles on my parents' faces, cold sweat poured down my entire body. It turned out that not only had I and the little black snake been reborn, but my malicious parents had also been reborn. I forced myself to calm down and said with a puzzled expression, "Mom, Dad, what are you talking about with this rebirth? I don't understand. How could I pretend not to know you? But there really aren't any photos of you two at home, and I have no memories of you in my mind. I genuinely don't recognize you." My parents exchanged knowing smiles. Mom directly pulled out her phone, pointing at the stocks I had recently invested in on the screen. "If you weren't reborn, how could you have invested in these stocks so accurately? Do you still want to explain?" I froze for a moment. My hands clenched behind my back until my palms bled. Forcing calm, I said, "This data came from my all-night research, and I've also had several failed stock investments. This doesn't prove I'm reborn." My parents immediately sneered and pointed at the small stray dog behind me. "What makes you think you could be reborn? If it weren't for your previous life where you donated all your assets to the orphanage and threatened suicide, do you think I would have used the beast control ring's power to let you be reborn?" At this, I was completely stunned. Turns out my rebirth was entirely orchestrated by Mom and Dad. I stared at them in disbelief. They looked at me coldly and said, "Do you know why we made the little black snake reincarnate too? Only this way could it gain enough vitality to absorb, and you, with memories from your past life as a billionaire CEO, must possess extraordinary financial luck. When the time comes, your sister will use the snake to drain your fortune. That's how your mother and I will finally become the world's richest people." I felt like I'd been plunged into an ice cellar. I always thought my rebirth was God having eyes, never imagined it was all planned by these wicked parents. In panic, I knocked over a red wine glass onto the floor. The sound of shattering glass immediately caught my sister's attention. Without a word, my sister slapped me across the face the moment she saw it. "For, haven't I made it clear already? Mom and Dad came today to take me back to the family. It has nothing to do with you. Did you break that cup on purpose just to grab everyone's attention?" That slap from my sister snapped me out of it. I took a deep breath and kicked my sister to the ground. "Only someone like you would acknowledge such vile parents. I want nothing to do with them." My sister lay on the floor, clutching her stomach, glaring at me venomously. "You're just jealous, aren't you? Jealous that Mom and Dad aren't taking you back to the family. Laya, a petty person like you doesn't deserve to be my sister." With that, my younger sister turned and clung to our parents' legs, saying, "Mom, Dad, we don't need this kind of sister anyway. Now that I have money, we'll be even richer when we return to the family." My parents quickly turned to embrace my sister. Watching the harmonious scene of their family of three, I simply stood up and walked away, but I hadn't gone far before turning back to scoop up my little mutt. Then I let it pee on the three of them, dog piss and all, right there in public. Their faces flushed crimson with embarrassment. They started cursing and yelling at me, yet my heart was filled with immense relief. Since last time I didn't even get a chance for revenge before my sister stabbed me to death. Consider this as collecting a small interest in advance. When the wedding ceremony concluded, Mom and Dad returned to their so-called reclusive family. My younger sister was holding the crown on the little black snake's head and said to me, "This is a gift left by Mom and Dad for me. They said it can enhance the little black snake's ability to absorb others' wealth." Seeing this crown, I was almost scared to death. With this crown on its head, the little black snake's scales became even darker, like venom. In my previous life, Mom and Dad also gave me the same crown. Despite my desperate refusal, they still placed this crown upon the little black snake's head. From then on, the little black snake's gaze became more human-like, often disobeying my commands and starting to siphon away others' fortunes. It even frequently sneaks in the dead of night while I'm asleep to secretly drain my vitality. My younger sister is now gloating proudly to me. "This crown is clearly priceless, something unseen in the market. Our parents said that when I use this crown to make the little black snake siphon more fortunes from others, they'll have the confidence to appoint me as clan leader once I return to the family. By the way, sister, You probably don't know yet how magnificent our family is. We practically control the global economic lifeline, yet I had no intention of responding to my sister, instead staring fixedly at that crown. Seeing my silence, my sister assumed I was jealous of her crown and immediately covered the crown on the little black snake's head. Listen, sister, this crown was given to me by Mom and Dad. If you dare try to take it, don't blame me for being harsh with you. Finally snapping out of it, I glanced at my sister and said coldly, why would I want to snatch that thing? I don't want anything to do with Mom and Dad either. Stop flaunting that worthless trinket in front of me. I have no interest in seeing it. From that day onward, my sister began to increasingly exploit the little black snake to siphon off others' wealth, while her own body withered away like a dried-up tree. Whenever netizens reminded her to take care of her health, she would lash back with insults, accusing them of being jealous of her wealth and good figure. Yet, seeing my sister's emaciated body, I couldn't help but feel uneasy in my heart. Can my sister survive for another month? Seeing me sizing her up, my sister immediately turned around while holding the little black snake. She glared at me with venomous eyes. Only then did I notice that my sister's eyes had become triangular in shape. The entire person was extremely thin, with skin so dark that even foundation couldn't conceal it. My sister's voice sounded like it came from hell. Are you jealous of my good figure too? I quickly shook my head. Only then did my sister turn back with relief, saying to the livestream, you all know my sister, right? When I was making waves in the stock market, she secretly followed me in too, but we're like heaven and earth apart. The investors immediately started showering praise, spamming the chat non-stop. Freya is a genius girl after all. How could your sister Dahlia ever compare to you? But with my sharp eyes, I clearly spotted one comment saying, wait a minute, streamer, I think your sister is actually prettier than you. You're so skinny you're just bones. It's terrifying. I was startled and quickly excused myself to turn and leave. After all, my sister's mental state was extremely unstable at the moment, and provoking her now might lead her to stab me to death with a knife, just like in my previous life. That night, as I lay peacefully asleep in bed, the little mutt had also returned to the beast-taming ring to sleep. Suddenly, a hissing sound was heard. A cold sensation instantly brushed across my forehead. When I desperately tried to open my eyes, a sticky fluid sealed them shut forcefully. I reached out and felt a slippery, elongated object sliding through my fingers, impossible to grasp no matter how hard I tried. I desperately shouted, little mutt, come out quick, help. Instantly, the beast-taming ring on my wrist grew warm, and I could open my eyes again, but that elongated object had already vanished without a trace. Only my door remains, left slightly ajar with a narrow gap. The small mutt bares its teeth, glaring fiercely at the doorway. Through the reflection outside the door, I see a slender shadow standing right outside my room. Meanwhile, faint scale marks are left etched on my palm. The mucus on my face proved that everything just now was not a dream. I held the little stray dog tightly in my arms. I knew the little black snake was standing right at my door at this moment. It wasn't afraid of my little stray dog, having consumed vast amounts of fortune and my sister's vitality. It's already stronger than my little mutt now, but it's just afraid that I'll perish together with it, unable to absorb the fortune and vitality from me. I held the little mutt in my arms, staying awake all night. On the morning of the second day, my parents suddenly came to our house, seeing my healthy appearance. They immediately looked somewhat surprised. I instantly realized that everything the little black snake did last night was controlled by my parents through the crown. I looked at my parents with a forced smile. What, are you here to pick up my sister? My parents were about to speak, but suddenly, my sister rushed out from the room. The entire figure was like a walking skeleton, emitting a foul stench that filled the air, directly approaching my parents, with a venomous glare at me. Mom and Dad came for me. It's none of your business. Get back to your room now. I pursed my lips, not wanting to say another word, and turned back to my room, but as I left, I clearly heard the younger sister asked her parents when they could take her back to the hidden family, but her parents' reply was, you need to wait at home a little longer, endure for a while more. I closed the door and slumped against the wall onto the floor, gasping heavily for air. The reason my parents made my sister wait was to let the little black snake completely drain my fortune and vitality. 5. I can't just sit here waiting for death, looking at the little stray dog in my hands. I suddenly asked a bizarre question, little dog, can you restore my sister's memories from her past life? But unexpectedly, the puppy actually spoke. Of course, master, you've been so kind to me. It's time for me to repay you. I was instantly overjoyed, but there was no time left to chat with the puppy now. I hurried to the supermarket and bought a large amount of food for the little mutt. As the little mutt was about to devour the food in front of it, I said with some concern, Puppy, actually I've been reborn. In my previous life, you were my sister's tamed beast, and it was because you ate too much food that you exploded and died. Now that you're making me eat so much food for your sake, nothing unexpected will happen, right? The puppy grinned with an almost human-like smile. Of course not, master. These days, you've had me gradually eat food without spitting gold coins. My abilities are already extraordinary, you can rest assured. When the little mutt finished eating, it weakly spat out a pill. It told me, as long as Freya takes this pill, she can recover the memories of her past life. With that said, he turned and returned to the beast control ring. I stroked the beast ring with some heartache, after quietly apologizing to the puppy. Then, under the moonlight, I made my way to my younger sister's room. The moment I entered the room, my sister sat up with a scream. At this moment, her hair had already fallen out, and she looked at me with a cold expression, saying, "What are you here for? To mock my secret of wearing a wig? To laugh at my misfortune?" I didn't respond but instead looked around and asked my sister, "Where's your little black snake?" My sister's voice was as hoarse as a broken bellows. "So you're here to steal my little black snake, you wretch? I knew you were up to no good. My little black snake has already gone to feed on someone else's fortune. Don't even think about taking it away from me." Upon learning the little black snake wasn't there, I quietly sat down by my sister's bedside. Seeing the venomous resentment in my sister's eyes, I sighed and revealed the secret of my rebirth to my sister, and told her that the beast control ring was our parents' scheme, but I concealed the fact that she had stabbed me with a knife. After hearing this, my younger sister expressed disbelief, saying I was just trying to trick her out of her little black snake. Seeing this, I forcibly pried open my sister's mouth and threw the small pill inside. My sister coughed a few times and instantly fell unconscious. When she opened her eyes again, they were filled with tears. She hugged me crying and said, "Sister, I'm truly not human. I actually stabbed you to death with a knife. Please forgive me, sister." Yet I clearly saw a trace of coldness in my sister's eyes. She wasn't truly repentant, but knew she wouldn't survive much longer without my help. I pretended not to notice and played along with my sister's tragic act. When it was all over, my sister couldn't wait to ask me, "Sister, how should we deal with those cruel parents now?" My eyes darted around, and after a moment of thought, I leaned down to whisper a few words into my sister's ear. Upon hearing this, my sister immediately cast a spell to summon her little black snake home. Meanwhile, I stood behind the door, smearing myself with the feces my sister had involuntarily left on the bed. When I heard the hissing sound, I immediately prepared myself. As soon as the little black snake pushed the door open, I immediately snatched the crown off its head. The little black snake was shocked and instantly lunged at me, but it was magically captured back into the beast control ring by my younger sister. I smiled at my sister and said, "Tomorrow you'll call our parents and tell them the little black snake drained my vitality and fortune, causing me to die tragically at home." After hearing this, a ruthless expression appeared on my sister's face. The next day, as I lay on the bed pretending to be dead, my sister opened the door cheerfully to welcome our parents' arrival. Mom and Dad stroked Freya's head and praised, "Freya did such a great job. Let Mom and Dad handle your sister's body. We have a 10,000 snake pit artifact. We'll throw her body in to feed the snakes." Lying on the bed, I sneered inwardly without changing my expression. When Mom and Dad stood by my bed and opened the 10,000 snake pit artifact, just as they were about to throw me in, Freya suddenly slashed their wrists with a knife. Our parents cried out in pain, and the 10,000 snake cave magical artifact fell from their hands, just as my younger sister was about to pick it up. I rolled off the bed and grabbed it first. My sister awkwardly smiled and said, "Sis, I was just planning to throw this harmful thing into the trash." I smiled without saying a word. The parents immediately pointed at the younger sister and cursed, "You vile wretch, how dare you conspire with your sister to frame me?" The younger sister smirked triumphantly and threw the beast control ring in her hand to the ground. "You two despicable creatures. You made the little black snake drain my life force and fabricated stories about a hidden family to deceive me. If not for my sister helping me awaken memories from my past life, I would have truly become your puppet." As she spoke, the younger sister's expression grew increasingly sinister. She began slicing flesh from their parents' bodies with a small knife, subjecting them to unbearable agony. Witnessing this nauseating scene before their eyes, I stood directly behind my younger sister and waved my hand to open the snake pit. I threw both my parents and my sister inside. My sister clung to the edge of the snake pit, looking at me in disbelief. "Sister, what are you doing? Why are you throwing me in?" I chuckled softly and pried her fingers off one by one. "If I'm not mistaken, after you deal with our parents, I'll be next, won't I? Do you secretly hate me? Hate me for taking your little earth dog beast ring in this life, which led you to this fate?" Seeing that I had voiced her innermost thoughts, My younger sister immediately shot me a venomous glare, hurling all sorts of curses at me, but I merely smiled faintly and threw her directly into the snake pit. Listening to the agonized cries of the three of them, along with the hissing of tens of thousands of snakes, I instantly felt my scalp crawl. Without hesitation, I sealed the snake pit artifact shut and tossed it onto the furnace. He took the opportunity to add a few more charcoal fires. Meanwhile, the beast ring of the little black snake was faintly trembling on the ground. There were even signs of it breaking free from the ring. I directly summoned the little earth dog and had it devour the little black snake's beast ring, but to my surprise, after the little mutt devoured the small black snake, it actually transformed into a 1.8-meter tall handsome guy with long legs. With his handsome face and his innate ability to spit out gold coins when eating, he was practically a rich second-generation heir. Watching the little mutt kneel on one knee, holding roses to propose to me, I hurriedly covered my face and ran away. This won't do. Humans and beasts cannot be together. But the little stray dog stubbornly chased after me, shouting loudly, "Dahlia, I love you. My love for you has broken societal norms, and I will definitely make you fall for me." It drew sidelong glances from passers-by. Story 2. My father brought back his illegitimate daughter from outside and even claimed that I was a fake daughter who had been switched at birth. I coldly watched him spout nonsense in front of my mother and even readily agreed to his unreasonable request to move out of the main residence. Later, the end of the world came, and zombies surrounded the city. My mother and I hid in the constructed fortress, enjoying delicious food and playing poker. However, he was brutally pushed into the horde of zombies by his illegitimate daughter and ended up with no trace of his remains. 1. I was reborn a week before the zombie outbreak. It happened to be the day when George brought his illegitimate daughter, Margot, home. The stench of zombies and the unwillingness and resentment of being killed by my own biological father still lingered in my body. When I opened my eyes again, I saw that twisted face appear in front of me once more. And the timid girl behind him was the one who had killed my mother. "Mom, Miss Margot." Margot tugged at the hem of George's clothes with one hand and spoke in a trembling voice, looking every bit like an innocent little rabbit. In my previous life, I was deceived by her appearance. I wholeheartedly believed that I had usurped the glory and wealth that rightfully belonged to her, even after the end of the world arrived. I did everything in my power to protect Margot. But it wasn't until I was on the verge of death that I learned that Margot was by no means the so-called real daughter. She was just the illegitimate child born to that man and his mistress outside. Bringing her back specifically when my mother was sick was just a scheme to inherit the family fortune rightfully after getting rid of us. Even my mother, whom I had thought died in an accident, was actually killed by Margot. My enemies were right in front of me. Yet I couldn't exact revenge immediately. I could only dig my nails into my palm, trying my best to appear normal. However, when our eyes met, I still couldn't completely hide my hatred. She seemed to be startled by me and shrank back behind George. George immediately glared at me and said sternly, "Eliza, why are you scaring your sister?" Yes, I took my mother's surname. Because of this, George had always disliked me. He thought I was a symbol of his cowardice and a testament to his loss of male dignity, but he never stopped to think that without my mother and the Eliza family, where would he be today, swaggering around as Mr. George? My mother reached out and put her arm around my shoulders, pulling me closer to her. I looked up and saw my mother furrowing her brows, her eyes darting back and forth between George and Margot. "Are you saying that she is our daughter? And Eliza was just switched at the hospital?" George nodded eagerly. "Yes, my dear, look at Margot, she looks so much like you." He pulled Margot in front of my mother. Margot wore a nervous smile on her face but still instinctively tried to curry favor with my mother. "Mom, to be honest, Margot didn't resemble my mother at all. At best, she was just pretty, not a fraction as beautiful as my mother." I wondered what on earth George was thinking to say such things. Sure enough, my mother's gaze shifted from Margot to me. She reached out and stroked my head, saying, "This is no small matter. I won't believe that Eliza isn't my child just because of your words. We'll discuss this further when the hospital brings the genetic test results." My mother took over my grandfather's company after graduating from university. Over the years, she couldn't possibly be an innocent girl, unfortunately. In my previous life, we never got to see that genetic test report. Instead, we waited for the zombies to surround the city. Looking at my gentle-eyed mother, I made up my mind that I must save her in this life. George rarely disagreed with what my mother said at home, and this time was no exception, but I guessed that he had already bribed the hospital. Otherwise, my mother's health wouldn't have been deteriorating so rapidly. However, during dinner, George set his sights on me again. "Eliza, although your mother said we should wait for the genetic test results, I think it might be a bit awkward for you to live with Margot. How about you go and stay at the old mansion for a while? When the results come out, Dad will bring you back. Didn't you say before that it's too noisy living in the city center? As soon as George finished speaking, the sound of forks and knives clattering on the table stopped. I lowered my head and curled the corners of my mouth. As expected, he couldn't wait any longer. In my previous life, he tried to drive me out of the house in this way, but my mother stopped him. As a result, when the food at home ran out, in order to escape, they pushed me into the horde of zombies. But this time, I won't let that happen. My mother put down her fork and was about to speak, but I gently pressed her thigh under the table. Under her puzzled gaze, I gave George a gentle smile. Dad, you're so considerate, but can I take Mom with me? It's less populated there, which is better for Mom's recovery, too. George's eyes lit up, and he immediately agreed, as if afraid I would change my mind. After dinner, George took Margot to choose a bedroom, while I followed my mother to the study. As soon as the door closed, my mother frowned and asked, "What's wrong with you today? Your father clearly wants to drive you out of the house." I helped my mother sit down on the chair, then took her arm and leaned my head on her shoulder. Since I was a child, my mother wasn't a gentle person. On the contrary, she was stricter with me and had higher expectations. Because I was destined to inherit the Eliza family's business, since my mother got sick, I entered the company. On the surface, I was assisting George, but in reality, I was in charge of all the company's business, big and small. That's why George was so eager to bring his illegitimate daughter home. The faint sandalwood scent of my mother lingered at the tip of my nose, gradually calming the emotions that had been stirred up by seeing George. When I closed my eyes, all I could see was the image of my mother after her death. She fell in the garden at home. Margot said my mother fell from the window. The passing zombies pounced on her and started feasting, and I could do nothing but watch helplessly. I couldn't even ensure that she had a whole body after death. "Eliza, you're acting very strange today. What's going on?" My mother noticed my body shaking. After pulling out her arm, she gently stroked my back. I opened my eyes and looked at her, let out a long sigh, and said solemnly, "Mom, do you trust me?" Of course. So I told her everything that happened to me in my previous life. The more I spoke, the uglier my mother's expression became. After I finished telling her how I was pushed into the horde of zombies by Margot and the others, her face turned as dark as ink. I looked at my silent mother nervously, feeling a sense of unease. The end of the world and zombies were such fantastical things that it was hard for ordinary people to accept their existence. I even prepared myself for the situation where my mother might think I was joking and refuse to go to the old mansion with me. I was willing to stay here and find a way to kill Margot and George if necessary, but my mother just pulled me into her arms. Since I grew up, my mother and I rarely had such intimate moments. Her warm embrace, soft body, and the faint smell of medicine made me feel as if I were in a dream. "Eliza, I'm sorry, you've been through so much. It must have been so painful to be killed by your own father. I'm sorry for giving you such a father." My mother's gentle voice reached my ears. The hand that I had just been about to use to hug her back froze in mid-air. The next second, I hugged her even tighter. Before I even realized it, tears were streaming down my face, wetting my mother's clothes. It turned out that I had always been so scared, so terrified, and also so desperate and resentful. "Mom," she held me, listening quietly to my sobs without saying a word, but I knew that her embrace was the best comfort. In the end, my mother agreed to go to the old mansion with me and believed everything I said. In my mother's words, if the end of the world didn't come, it would be like spending money to ease my mind. After all, the Eliza family could afford it. As for George and the others, even if they lived a little longer, it wouldn't matter. A grasshopper can jump as high as it wants, but it's still just a grasshopper. Early the next morning, the butler told me that George and Margot had gone out, seemingly to buy clothes for Margot. The butler looked at me hesitantly. I knew he didn't like George. He was already quite old and had basically watched my mother grow up. Naturally, he didn't want his young lady to spend her life with such a man. I patted the butler's shoulder and said softly, "It's okay, Harrison, he won't be able to act recklessly for long." I didn't tell the butler about the end of the world. I just told him to come to the old mansion to find us 6 days later and bring all the servants in the house with him. The butler was confused but agreed anyway. If I remembered correctly, most of the servants in the house died because of George after the end of the world came in my previous life, due to his greed and cowardice. He used them as guinea pigs, and they died desperately in the mouths of zombies. Before my mother and I left, we installed surveillance cameras in every corner of the villa so that we could know George's latest situation in the first place. Moreover, we could also figure out which people in the villa had secretly sided with George. Although peeking isn't good, but looking at one's own home, how can it be called peeking? The old mansion of the Eliza family was located far from the city center. Surrounded by mountains and water and sparsely populated, people in the circle used to joke that being sent to the old mansion of the Eliza family was no different from being exiled to the border, but in the apocalypse, such a place offered the greatest chance of survival. The car stopped at the gate of the old mansion. I looked up at the building that resembled a castle and once again marveled at the wealth of the Eliza family. My mother walked up and pushed open the gate. What greeted us was a garden that hadn't been tended to for a long time. In the middle of the garden was a dried-up fountain. The entire garden was surrounded by golden railings, and further in was the castle itself. This old mansion has been passed down in the Eliza family for generations. Although it's a bit desolate, it has the advantage of being large in area and having many floors. It can easily accommodate dozens of people, my mother said as she opened the door. The Eliza family's business spanned the world, with cooperative institutions even abroad. It was a truly prosperous family that had been thriving since 100 years ago. However, from the previous generation, the family had few offspring. By my mother's generation, she was the only child. My grandparents couldn't bear to marry my mother off, so they could only recruit a son-in-law. But families with some wealth were reluctant to give up their family property. And my mother didn't fancy those from ordinary families. George was the one they carefully selected. He was an intellectual with a high degree, had good manners, and wouldn't embarrass the family in public. He was gentle and caring towards my mother, making him the perfect choice for marriage. But at that time, no one knew that George had a pregnant first love, and he himself was a beast in human clothing. My mother waved her phone at me. The photo clearly showed George and Margot picking out bags in a Chanel store. They were already carrying numerous bags, looking more like they were stocking up at the mall. Aunt Audrey sent me these photos and asked me what was going on. Aunt Audrey and my mother had been friends since childhood and had always disliked George. My mother briefly told Aunt Audrey about the current situation and also subtly suggested that she stock up on more supplies at home recently. Aunt Audrey didn't know the reason, but due to my mother's status, she thought it was some confidential information. There were only 6 days left until the end of the world. The time left for my mother and me was running out. In order to survive longer in the apocalypse, my mother and I decided to split up and act. She could use her status to buy firearms and some large items that ordinary people couldn't get, while I would go to buy food and daily necessities that might be needed in the apocalypse. But the most important thing at the moment was to clean the house. I casually touched the wall and ended up with a handful of dust, but when I looked up at the tall building, my calves started to tremble. I was about to turn around and ask my mother what to do when she had already picked up the phone to make a call and raised an eyebrow at me. There aren't many things in this world that money can't solve. In just half an hour, dozens of cleaners were standing outside the castle. My reaction, My mother went out while I was cleaning the house. She answered a phone call and sounded very anxious. She only had time to say hello to me. I didn't idle around either. I got the contact information of the workers who could help renovate the land from the butler and immediately invited them to the house to renovate the entire yard. This time, instead of planting flowers, we would plant vegetables and fruits, although I didn't know how long it would take for them to grow. I thought that with the long apocalypse, we would surely wait for the day when they matured. After negotiating with the workers who would renovate the land, I met with the construction workers. They were here to renovate the garden wall. I planned to build the wall higher to prevent zombies from entering the garden. Even the garden gate would be replaced with an iron gate. Originally, the workers told me that such a large-scale project couldn't be completed in a short time. But when I offered a high price, he called all his colleagues and promised to work day and night to get the job done. Seeing that everyone was performing their respective duties, I started to open the shopping app and purchased a large quantity of frozen food from the internet. The castle, including the basement, has a total of 5 floors. The basement can be used to store various vegetables, while frozen food must be kept in the refrigerator. I planned to put it on the top floor. Although there is an elevator in the castle, it has been damaged due to years of disuse, and I didn't intend to repair it. When the apocalypse really comes, electricity will become a very scarce resource. Even if solar panels are installed at that time, it's better to use the electricity for more practical purposes rather than for the elevator. I carefully selected and bought a lot of vegetables that are easy to store online, such as corn, potatoes, etc. Besides, I also bought instant noodles and self-heating hot pots for emergencies. As for seasonings, I bought whatever I saw, purchasing them in dozens of bottles. The same goes for mineral water. When one supermarket didn't have enough, I switched to several others and almost emptied them out. My mother didn't return home until sunset. A large truck was following her car, and I was stunned when I saw it parked outside. I immediately rushed to my mother, who had just got out of the car, and asked, "Mom, What did you buy? My mother had a smile on her face, perhaps because of excitement. Her face, which had been somewhat pale due to illness, now looked much rosier. The truck behind also stopped. When the trunk was opened, it turned out to be filled with large-scale fitness equipment and 3 freezers. I thought that if we didn't exercise at home all day, our physical fitness would definitely not keep up. What if we need to abandon the castle and run away? Our weak arms and legs wouldn't do. So I simply bought the fitness equipment so that we can exercise at home, my mother said in a low voice. I couldn't help but give her a thumbs up, taking advantage of the time when the workers were moving the items. I told her all the preparations I had made that afternoon. After listening, my mother reached out and touched my head. No wonder you're my daughter, you really think things through. I'll go buy a large SUV tomorrow and have it modified, then, if we run out of supplies later, we can drive out to look for more. After the workers left, I closed the door and turned to look at my mother. She was sitting on the sofa playing with her phone, with freshly washed fruits beside her. Mom, what did you do this afternoon? I asked someone to find a way and prepared some good stuff for us. As she said that, she made a shooting gesture with her hand. Seeing that my mother couldn't bear to take her eyes off the phone screen, I simply sat beside her. It turned out that she was watching the surveillance of our house. Without us there, Margot and George had obviously regarded the villa as their own home. Margot was sitting on the sofa, casually spitting sunflower seeds on the carpet worth tens of thousands of yuan. The clothes she was wearing seemed to be the high-end custom-made ones from my wardrobe. She had gemstone rings on all 10 fingers and even wore the diamond crown I bought when I was 18 on her head. As for George, he seemed to be much more restrained than Margot. However, he opened all the wine stored in the house and got himself drunk, constantly cursing my mother and me. I secretly glanced at my mother's expression, seeing that she didn't seem too sad. I couldn't help but ask, Mom, why did you get together with George in the first place? 5. My mother closed the surveillance app on her phone, then sighed and turned to gently stroke my hair. When I was young, I was easily deceived by appearances. By the time I realized something was wrong, it was already too late, but fortunately, everything can start anew now. I held my mother's hand and nodded firmly. The soil in the yard had all been turned over. I hired workers to plant the seeds in the soil. He told me a lot of precautions for planting, and I wrote them down one by one, planning to tell the butler later, if I were to take care of them myself. I'm afraid they would all die on the first day of the apocalypse. As for the fountain, which had been refilled with water, I didn't waste it. I threw a few Christian carps into it. When my mother came back in the evening, most of the daily necessities at home had been stocked up. I also bought dozens of large-capacity power banks and fully charged them. Although there would be no signal in the apocalypse, we could still watch the TV dramas and movies downloaded on our phones and tablets to pass the time. She brought workers to install solar charging panels on the rooftop. While the workers were installing them, my mother and I spent the whole day watching the surveillance of the villa. Today, many employees in the company had been persuaded by George to betray my mother and me. I wrote down their names one by one and sent their photos to the butler. Towards evening, George and Margot changed into formal attire and left in a luxury car. My mother said softly, "There's a charity gala tonight. They should be going to attend it." During the time when my mother and I were away, George seemed to have really regarded himself as the leader of the company. He not only bossed around my subordinates but also claimed outside that Margot was his biological daughter. As a result, these days, I received a lot of inquiry messages. Everyone wanted to know whether what George said was true or false. There's not much true affection in the wealthy circles. If what he said was true, those shareholders and young masters and ladies who had supported me before would turn around and flatter Margot. I felt a little uneasy. My inaction in company affairs these days had made many people complain about my mother and me. If the apocalypse didn't come on time, my mother and I would surely be impeached by the shareholders. By then, it would take more time and effort to deal with George. I turned to my mother and asked, "Mom, if the apocalypse doesn't come, did I do something wrong?" My mother put down her phone, looked at me, and said gently, "Eliza, I know I used to always tell you that you must have 100% certainty before taking action, so that you can stay invincible, but now, I want to tell you that everyone fails sometimes, even I. The biggest failure in my life was getting together with George, but it was also the most successful thing I've ever done because you came into my life, so don't worry about whether what you did is right or wrong. Perhaps everything is predestined." Looking into my mother's eyes, I felt a sharp pain in my nose and nodded firmly. The news that George attended the event with Margot quickly made it to the trending topics. Everyone was speculating whether the Eliza group would be renamed. In the photos, George looked radiant and his face was ruddy. People who didn't know might think he had already become the chairman of the Eliza group. My mother's phone vibrated twice. It was a message from George, pretending to tell my mother not to believe the rumors on the internet and that he and Margot were waiting for us to go back. Go back. I'm afraid even if they knelt down and begged us, we wouldn't set foot in that house again. My mother and I didn't stop for a moment in the following days, just to turn this castle into an impregnable fortress. Finally, the day before the apocalypse arrived, all the projects were completed, the 2-story high fence, the thick iron gate, in order to prevent anyone from climbing over the fence. My mother even wrapped a lot of thorns on top. The yard was filled with vegetables and fruits that were easy to store. The first floor of the castle had the fitness equipment. The second floor was for accommodation. The third floor stored daily necessities like tissues and clothes for all seasons, to prevent sudden temperature changes. I even bought a lot of thick quilts. The fourth floor was filled with freezers, all stuffed with meat products, and the small attic held firearms. As for vegetables and drinking water, I put them in the basement. I even bought 3 huge iron boxes to store tap water. During these days, while the water pipes were still working normally, I had already filled 1 box, so that we could still do some simple cleaning work after the apocalypse arrived. On the night of the 6th day, the butler, along with the servants he brought from the villa, knocked on our door. Seeing the facilities in the castle, the butler opened his mouth wide and stammered, "Miss, madam, what is all this?" My mother patted him on the shoulder and said solemnly, "Welcome to the Doomsday Fortress, 6." My mother and I explained the current situation to them in the simplest terms. It was still hard for people to accept the idea of the end of the world. Fortunately, the servants the butler brought had worked in the family for most of their lives. Even if they didn't believe it in their hearts, they wouldn't refute what my mother and I said. They had absolute loyalty. After the butler led them to put their luggage in their respective rooms, they started to go about their usual work as before. Looking at the chefs working orderly in the kitchen, my mother and I lay on the sofa and let out a long sigh of relief. Fortunately, the chefs came with us. Otherwise, with my mother's and my cooking skills, we might have poisoned ourselves in the apocalypse. Before dinner, George called my mother's phone. His voice sounded a little anxious, and he didn't even bother to pretend his usual tenderness. "Where are all the servants in the house? Did you call them away?" Upon hearing this, my mother just leisurely picked her ear, as if she had heard something dirty, and then said, "They are servants of the Eliza family, and have nothing to do with you, even if I did call them away. So what?" George seemed to take 2 deep breaths to calm himself down. He probably realized that he couldn't completely fall out with my mother yet. "Honey, don't talk nonsense. Ask them to come back quickly. Aren't you and Eliza coming back too? How can I rest assured if there's no one to take care of you at home?" On the surface, George seemed to be only concerned about my mother's and my life, but through the surveillance, I could see his ugly face clearly, full of hatred. My mother chuckled and said, "George, do you really think I don't know what you're up to? You know very well what Margot's true identity is. My mother and I won't be coming back. George, it's over between us." "Honey, what are you talking about?" Before George could finish, my mother hung up the phone, watching him smash his phone in anger and then look pained on the surveillance. I laughed so hard that I couldn't straighten up. Just then, the butler came to call my mother and me to the dining table. My mother and I were the only 2 people sitting at the huge dining table, which made it seem rather empty and lonely. My mother said, "Harrison, go and call all the servants in the house. Let's all sit down and eat together, madam. This isn't proper. Who knows what will happen after tonight? There's no need to worry so much about what's proper or not." The butler still hesitated, but after being glared at by my mother, he quickly went to call the others. Before long, the previously empty dining table was filled with people. My mother specially opened a bottle of red wine and filled everyone's glasses. Then she stood up, raised her glass, and swept her gaze across everyone's faces, her eyes filled with tears. "All of you have worked for the Eliza family for most of your lives. Many of you have watched me and Eliza grow up. Here, I want to thank you all for everything you've done for the Eliza family. The things I told you today were told to me by Eliza. We'll know whether it's true or false tonight. I only have one thing to say, that is, whether the end of the world really comes or not. In my heart, you are just like my family. I hope none of you will be missing." After saying that, my mother drank the red wine in her glass in one gulp. I saw the butler secretly wiping his tears with a napkin. At 10 o'clock at night, an extremely huge meteor streaked across the sky, followed by the shaking of the floor. Just like an earthquake, sitting on the sofa, I involuntarily clenched my fists. I knew that everything had begun. The apocalypse had finally arrived. A warm hand gently placed on the back of my hand. I turned my head and met my mother's gaze. Her eyes gave me great encouragement and comfort. This life is different from the previous one. I have my mother, and we will get through this. 7. On the first night of the apocalypse, no one in the castle could fall asleep. Everyone gathered in the living room, straining their ears to listen to the sounds outside, according to my experience from my previous life. The mutation started from the city center. The falling meteor created a giant sinkhole, and the radiation from outer space infected many people. Our castle is located in the suburbs. Although there aren't many people around, it's only a matter of time before fleeing humans and foraging zombies find us. My mother turned on the TV, and every channel was showing news broadcasts. The host, who always had a faint smile and a calm, indifferent tone, now looked disheveled, with beads of sweat on his forehead. According to reliable information, the meteor that landed in City S tonight carried unknown radiation. Anyone who comes into contact with it will lose consciousness and become a zombie that attacks humans indiscriminately. We urge all citizens to lock their doors and windows, stay indoors, and wait for rescue. I repeat, we urge all citizens to lock their doors and windows, stay indoors, and wait for rescue. As soon as the host finished speaking, the cameraman was knocked down by something unknown. The camera fell to the ground, and the last image captured was just a pool of blood and continuous screams. No one made a sound in the living room. Everyone was greatly frightened by the scene. It was not until a long time later that someone's suppressed sobs were heard. I held my mother's hand tightly, and my cold body seemed to come back to life at this moment. Our son is still working outside. What should we do? It was the family's nanny who spoke. She and the butler had been married for many years, and they had only one son who was still working outside. They didn't know if there would be a chance to see him again in this life. The butler reached out and hugged her in his arms, comforting her gently. I felt somewhat helpless. Although I had been reborn for a lifetime, I still couldn't save everyone. Saving them was already the best I could do. Eliza, don't blame yourself. No one will blame you. You've done a great job. My mother seemed to see the sadness in my heart. She pinched my face, and her tone was as gentle as ever. I smiled at her, and the feeling of powerlessness in my heart finally dissipated a little. That night, everyone curled up in the living room, comforting each other. No one thought of George and Margot because, in the face of their own life safety, those beasts were insignificant. It was not until the sun shone through the window the next day that everyone came back to their senses from the fatigue of staying up all night. The butler was the first to cheer up. He called on everyone to live a normal life. There were a lot of supplies in the castle. As long as they were used properly, they would surely be able to hold out until the country found them. He said that they couldn't let down the great efforts of the Miss and the Madam. Inspired by the butler, everyone finally regained their former vitality. The previously lifeless castle started to operate again, and he volunteered to go to the attic to observe the situation around the castle. My mother and I were lounging on the sofa with nothing to do, so we opened the surveillance again. George and Margot were in their respective rooms, and their faces didn't look good. They seemed to have been greatly frightened by what happened last night. After they left their rooms, they all went to the kitchen. However, due to their wanton behavior in the past few days, the food stored at home had long been consumed completely. George and Margot looked at each other, but after some discussion, neither of them was willing to step out of the room to look for food. They could only fill their stomachs with snacks. In the once prosperous area, there was no other sound except for the screams of people and the roars of zombies. They didn't dare to stay in the living room for long. After eating, they went upstairs again. Under my control, the surveillance camera rotated slightly towards the window, and I saw the zombies wandering outside the window, their ragged faces, grayish-green skin, and the sticky blood on their faces. Just seeing them through the phone, my mother and I couldn't help feeling nauseous. Fortunately, we can't see such monsters in our house. Yes, I just don't know how long Margot and the others can last. My mother and I looked at each other and smiled. Finally, we found something interesting in this dull apocalypse, but we didn't expect that in just 3 days, they had already used human lives to exchange for food. 8. To be honest, apart from occasionally smelling the bloody smell in the air, there were no major problems with life in the castle. As time went by, occasionally there would be a few zombies staggering outside the castle. In order to train my courage, my mother asked the butler to teach me how to shoot. The main way was to stand in the attic and shoot the zombies downstairs through the small window. However, my aim was really not good. Many times, I almost shot the small saplings in the garden, and the gardener was so scared that he almost knelt down to me, but it still added some fun to the boring life. That night, my mother somehow took out a deck of playing cards and insisted on playing cards with us to pass the time. All the servants who were slow to escape were caught by her. Halfway through the game, I lost everything. I really couldn't take it anymore, so I firmly grabbed the butler to take my place, and then happily went to my mother's side to play with my phone. As soon as I opened the surveillance, I saw George and Margot huddled together in the dim living room, not knowing what they were plotting. The food in their house had long been eaten up. Now, their eyes were bloodshot and red, but their expressions were extremely calm. It was not until the sound of footsteps came from behind them that I realized it was the servant who had stayed in the villa before. "Sir, what do you want me for?" The apocalypse came suddenly, and some servants who used to live together in the house didn't have time to go back. Instead, they were locked up with George and the others. George had a smile on his face that made my hair stand on end, and I immediately felt a sense of alarm in my heart. The last time he showed such a smile was when he pushed me into the horde of zombies. "Well, the food at home is all gone. We hope you can go to the nearby supermarket and take a look." The servant looked terrified. At the beginning of the apocalypse, people were still afraid of zombies. Without thinking, he shook his head and refused. "Sir, there are zombies outside. I can't do it." After being refused, George's face immediately fell, and he said sternly to him, "I'm your boss, you have to do what I say. Besides, when all the food at home is gone, we'll only die. It's better to take a chance now." But the servant still didn't want to go out. He stepped back, trying to return to his room, but bumped into Margot, who had somehow bypassed him and stood behind him. Margot was holding a fruit knife in her hand, and the dim light made her look like a demon from hell. "Are you going or not? If you don't go, I'll kill you right now." The man knelt down on the ground with a thud, kowtowing and begging for mercy, but George and the others didn't show any mercy. They almost dragged the man out of the villa and threw him out. After that, George wiped the sweat off his face, let out a sigh of relief, and said, "Even if he doesn't bring back any food, there's one less mouth to feed." Margot nodded, fully agreeing. After watching this scene, I broke out in a cold sweat, as if I had seen the ending of my mother and me in my previous life. Fortunately, no. I looked up at my mother. She was sitting on the ground, laughing heartily as she gathered up her winnings. Fortunately, none of that has happened yet. I was very curious about the fate of the servant who was thrown out, so I kept holding my phone and paying attention to the situation in the surveillance. My mother noticed this and asked me the reason. After thinking for a moment, I told her what George and the others had done. After hearing this, my mother let out a deep sigh. "I originally thought he was just greedy and stupid. Now it seems that he is a complete sinner." After the sun set that day, the servant actually came back. Not only did he come back, but he even brought food, but George didn't let him in. They locked him outside the door on the grounds that he had a wound on his arm, even though the other party strongly explained that it was just a scratch. In the end, through the surveillance, I heard the screams of the other party being bitten by the zombies. 9. It had been a full month since the apocalypse arrived. The supplies in the castle had decreased, but fortunately, there were still a lot left. During this month, George had used his old tricks to kill all the servants in the villa, but even so, he and Margot were losing weight at a visible speed. In contrast, my mother and I had been eating and drinking well every day during this period and were also diligent in exercising. We even looked healthier than before the apocalypse. Except for us, everyone in the house didn't resist the daily exercise routine. After a period of time, even the butler had a few more abs. It wasn't that we hadn't encountered passers-by who tried to break in by force at night, but they were scared away by our gunshots. The high walls surrounded the castle, protecting it like an isolated Noah's Ark. As early as 2 days ago, through the surveillance, I heard George and the others planning to escape from the villa. The main reason was that even if they continued to stay at home, without food, it was just a dead end. Sure enough, my mother's gaze shifted from Margot to me, and she reached out to touch my head, saying, "This is not a small matter. I won't believe that Eliza isn't my child just because of your words." I directly projected the surveillance onto the TV and called on everyone in the house to watch it together. In an instant, the sofa was filled with people, and there were freshly fried French fries placed in front of them. Everyone held their breath and watched the TV. They saw George push open the door and observe the situation at the door. After a while, since there were still no zombies passing by, George let out a long sigh of relief and then waved his hand to Margot behind him. Margot followed closely behind him, still holding a fruit knife in her hand. After a month, the two of them appeared under the blue sky again, and the excitement and nervousness on their faces couldn't be hidden. Unfortunately, the observation range of the surveillance was limited. If they really left the villa, it would be difficult for us to monitor their every move. There was a look of reluctance in my mother's eyes. After all, this was our only entertainment during this period. However, Something unexpected happened. A zombie suddenly emerged from the grass beside the villa and pounced towards Margot. From the angle of the surveillance, we could only see that at the critical moment of life and death, Margot pushed George towards the zombie and then turned around and ran back into the villa and slammed the door shut. The action was smooth and without the slightest hesitation. After watching it, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Awesome." George's screams were continuous, but Margot pressed against the door tightly from beginning to end. The veins on her neck were bulging, and it was obvious that she was using all her strength. The screams outside gradually stopped, and the strength in Margot's hands also relaxed. She looked outside through a small piece of glass on the door. Except for George's disfigured body lying on the ground, it was completely silent. Margot clenched the fruit knife and actually opened the door again, however. What was waiting for her was the zombie lurking by the door. Amid Margot's screams, she was knocked down to the ground by the zombie, and I finally saw the appearance of the zombie clearly. It was the man they had locked outside the door and killed that day. My mother and I looked at each other, and we both saw the word deserved in each other's eyes. There was still a long time left in the apocalypse, and I didn't know if we could live until the day when everything ended, but at least my mother and I witnessed George's death with our own eyes. It could be considered as avenging what happened in my previous life. A year after the apocalypse arrived, the supplies in the castle had decreased by more than half, and my mother became visibly anxious. She even started to think about how to drive the modified SUV out to look for supplies. But on that day, when the sun was shining brightly, we heard the roar of a car outside. The camouflage-patterned car was driving on the empty road, and the flag on the roof was so bright that it made people want to cry. "The army is here for support."